right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Buck, along with my coworker Jordan Bianchi and our other coworker Luke Smith, who is here in Las Vegas with us. We have just barely woken up from the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and we're sort of digesting what has all happened here this week. Some of us have coffee, and then Jordan has poured us mimosas.
Yeah.
You brought champagne for this occasion?
We have Luke on the show. We got to bring out
big day.
The best.
Yeah.
Only the best for my friend over here.
Okay. We may have our other F1 writer, Madeline Coleman, join us later in the show. We're not sure. Like, Luke, you're literally on 1 hour of sleep to paint the picture for everybody.
Well, why is that, Luke?
Oh dear, Jordan. So if
you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to.
No, we'll talk about it. As I'm sure we'll get into, this timetable's been a absolute head screw for everybody in the F1 paddock. And I was getting like 3 hours sleep a night, really, really rough. And then I took some melatonin after a qualifying day, and I slept a good 10 hours and felt amazing. I was like, this is great. And the one thing I'd not done in Las Vegas was go and do any gambling. And I thought, you know what, I'd like to play a little bit of blackjack. So I texted my friends once I finished work last night in the early hours of this morning. And
which was like 4:30 this morning.
Which was like,
right?
Yeah, we left a little bit around 4.
Yeah. I can tell you the time of the text, actually, if you would really like.
No.
It was at 5:01. I sent the text saying, are you guys still there? And there was Flamingo, which when I told you guys this, your reaction was...
Out of all the casinos to go to.
Yeah.
Well, because this is your first time in Vegas. We want you to enjoy Vegas and have a good time. The Flamingo was not our first choice.
No. By the way, you're staying at a casino. There's blackjack.
I know. I could literally walked from my room.
There's blackjack literally a 30-second walk from us.
But I thought Tuscany, though.
Well, I'm not saying it's... I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's great, but I'm saying if you have an itch to play blackjack, it's right over here.
I know.
Okay.
But
it ain't much.
So yeah, I went there.
The Flamingo ain't better.
It's definitely not. No. And I went there and I didn't win, and then was like, I'll get back, get a few hours sleep, and then after like an hour, I just woke up and was like, whoa. So 1 hour sleep, but that kind of sums up this weekend, I think. It's not been smooth at all for anybody. It's been pretty brutally in terms of sleep and stuff, but it's been a lot of fun, as I'm sure we'll get into.
We should get hit by a drain hole cover.
That is true, yeah. My weekend went better than Carlos Sainz. So.
Well, let's back up, because I was almost going to start the podcast by saying, welcome to our podcast about the NASCAR Chicago street race, because Jordan, there were so many similarities. I had so much sense of deja vu this entire weekend, but I wasn't sure it was going to end as well as the Chicago street race. And then it did. So let's just, for those of you who are listening, mostly NASCAR fans, you'll remember that there was all this hand wringing about how NASCAR in Chicago was going to go. I don't know how closely you followed it, Luke, but the city was upset about disruptions and all stuff, very similar to Las Vegas, although Las Vegas was on a much bigger scale. So then everybody gets there, and it was like, wow, they've actually pulled this off. This is amazing. As similar to what people saw when they saw the track, and it was like the lights, and I mean, it looks unbelievable. Like, this is actually an event that's going to happen, and this is sort of a modern marvel of motorsports. Try saying that 3 times fast.
No.
So then it's like, wow, this is great. And then shortly into the first on-track action, just like as in Chicago, it all goes wrong, because in Chicago, it wasn't drain covers, but the weather, lightning sort of popped up out of nowhere, and it ended up canceling the entire day. They evacuated everybody, fans.
Can I just say, Chicago, they did have a stretch there where it was fine.
It started off. It wasn't that soon. Right.
Yeah, and so they
kept practicing qualified.
Yeah, and so it was like, oh, okay, wow. It was like, hell, they did this. This is working.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say we walked there and we're like, whoa, this is a real legit road course. They didn't screw this up, and it was legit, and it went off well. But here, though,
you got 8 minutes before that happened.
8 minutes,
literally
man.
8 minutes.
8 minutes. A lot can happen in 8 minutes.
But so then, because you and I remember that Saturday night of Chicago, it felt like our balloon had been completely popped. We felt the everything had gone completely flat. It started so well, and there was almost like a bewilderment of like, how did this go so wrong so quickly? How could this have happened? And that same feeling, almost to a T, was what was happening Thursday night, as they're like, well, now we got to go. We cancel first practice here. Now we've got to go replace every drain cover, and we might not be able to do second practice. Oh no, wait, we're going to do second practice, but we're going to kick out all the fans. And then of course we'll get into this more, but Liberty Media, or F1's the terrible way they handled it with their PR statements, not apologizing, all this stuff. And then
we got a voucher though.
In NASCAR Chicago's case, it totally redeemed itself because it turned out to be this great race. They ended up getting it in, and it was awesome. And everybody left there feeling, this is actually really cool. I can't wait to come back and try this again next year with a clean version where everything goes smoothly. And again, that seemed to be the case with this race. Yeah. So it was so weird to have this feeling like just not even 6 months apart. I can't even tell you how similar the emotions felt.
Yeah. It's really strange. Like, I think that for F1, we do have these kinds of things happen every now and then. Like the team principal spoke on, I can't remember what day it was now, Thursday maybe? Friday?
It was Thursday night, just like an hour, like 11 o'clock.
There we go. Yeah. And they said like, hey, these things happen. We go to Baku, we go to Monaco, they're street tracks, and it happens. And I agreed with that. But also, F1 spent $500 million to make this race happen. Like, this should have been sorted. Like, I know we can't test what the track is going to be like until you have actual F1 cars on there. But still, it was it was a massive ball drop for F1. It was not a good look. And ultimately, though, it did redeem itself. Like, as I wrote post-race, like, F1 won in Las Vegas despite starting in the worst possible fashion.
And that's what I think is, like, you go back and I think what's the comments were made, especially by Total Wolf, were I disagree with. Like, I think it is a black eye.
Yeah.
Like, it was a black eye. Totally. And this was before they even kicked out the fans.
Yeah.
I think it was a bad look. And he said, no one's going to care. Like, tomorrow, Europe's going to wake up. They're not going to realize this. And ultimately, he was right.
Yeah.
Like, I think when you look back on this, it's going to be a footnote. It's like, oh, yeah, that first practice session was wonky and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, no one's going to talk about it. No. They're going to talk about, I don't think it's arguably, I think it's the best race of the year where you had multiple winners in contention for the win and you had a lot of different storylines and how successfully they pulled this off. And it is now going to be a footnote. And it worked out. It was a very... back roads, curious way to get there.
It wasn't all up, but I think, maybe, that's going to maybe add to the story of this race. Like F1, I think, can pat itself on the back for what it achieved, absolutely, but there is a lot that needs to be fixed for next year, and I think the way that started, it just didn't set things on the right note, and then what happened with the fans was, just completely unacceptable.
Well, let's just start there.
We got a voucher. Come on.
Let's start is sort of chronological order. Everybody, the drivers had to get here. Really, I mean, they had to start doing media stuff on Tuesday, where they were making multiple appearances. Your media day wasn't even till Wednesday.
Yeah.
We've been here a long time, Jordan. But, so there's a lot of talk about, it was just, what's this going to be like? After all these months, it's like, how's this going to be? How's this going to be? So you finally get on track and the signs thing happens, fairly quickly. And I mean, you've talked, Luke, that this has happened in other races, but what was the reaction from the people you talked to sort of in the paddock that, because I don't know the paddock was fully embracing this race as it was anyway. So in those, in the aftermath of that, how were people feeling about what was happening in Vegas, I guess?
I think they felt that was a confirmation and justification for their trepidation and how they were feeling coming into this race. Like, you're correct. There was a lot of concern, uncertainty. I remember getting texts from team members when they arrived in Vegas being like, this is someplace. And I think that we're so used to going to these like pristine state-of-the-art F1 facilities. So to come to a street track is always a little bit different. But there were concerns. Like, I know, I had someone tell me that the organizers were, quote, scrambling in recent weeks because they had to get everything ready. They were behind at points, and ultimately they did, and that is always the case with new races. And then, like, talking to team members, they were saying that they didn't have information on, like, how do the drivers get into the circuit? Is there going to be a police escort and things like that when they normally have that way in advance? So it's little things like that that I think bred that kind of uncertainty people were feeling. And then when you have, as you say, 8 minutes into the first session, that happen, it kind of makes everyone go, well, we were right. Like, this is why we've been critical about this race and so concerned, and they haven't got things together properly.
And so it was a sort of a shock in itself in the moment where they go, all right, FP1 will not be resumed. It was like, whoa, okay, this is not an immediate fix. And then it starts becoming obvious that they're going to have to go to all these water valve covers, whatever. We thought at first they're manhole covers. They're not manhole covers because it's not a type of sewer where you go and crawl into it.
Yeah, a man could not fit in that hole.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle?
But these were, I mean, maybe a turtle could.
This is why I bring to the podcast,
Nice.
Luke.
I like it.
The thing is, though, like, it's sort of like, how could this happen? Because it's not like they were racing down Las Vegas Boulevard, which had 30-year-old asphalt. They had repaved it.
Yep.
And this had been part of that repaving project,
Mm-hmm.
brand new asphalt. So it's like, how does this happen? So then they have to go and pull up all the drains, fill them, all the stuff. And by the time it finishes, they said at first, you know, the practice is supposed to start at midnight. Then they say, okay, maybe 2 a.m., then 2:30.
Yeah.
But at 1:30, they say, okay, we're kicking out all the fans. Every fan has to leave because we can't keep the security and all the personnel here. So that's when things started going pretty wrong, I feel like. I mean, that's when things started getting pretty sour for me.
I mean, to me, it was canceling FP1. I mean, 8 minutes in the session, which all of this excitement, all of this hype, this is actually going to be, you know, what is it going to be like to see cars racing down the strip? And then, oh, yeah, we don't get that. And instead, you've got a track that is inadequate, has got issues, and obviously needs to be checked, if not have major repairs. And then it was like, okay, this is already bad. This was already a black eye. This was bad. And then as it goes on, and then when you kick out the fans, it elevated it to an even higher level. And the thing with that is like, I get it. Like they truly, the organizers were kind of in a bind. I mean, you're dealing with contract workers, you got unions, stuff like that. It's like, how do you know, we hear all the time, like if you're going to have spectators here, you got to have personnel that work here. So what do you do at that point? Like now, could you have, what I would have done, I would just say, we're done for the night. Like we're going to start fresh tomorrow. It didn't work out. And then it also gives your track workers time to really thoroughly inspect everything. They're not under the gun. And you just say, we're bringing everybody back tomorrow. And by the way, if you had a ticket for today, only for today, come back tomorrow, you get in for free. And that's how you win it. You're still going to have to deal with the fallout and everything, but it certainly diminishes we're kicking people out. And then, by the way, you don't get your money back, but you get a really cool voucher.
But can they even do that, Luke, under FIA regulations? Can they even say, we're going to take FP2, move it a day, have FP3 the same day, or combine it and then have qualifying that day? Because, I mean, the regulations, I feel like NASCAR has a lot more flexibility with what they do because they're like, except in rare instances, and they can just move stuff around. I feel like in the FIA, they're like, nope, this is what it says.
Yeah, and there are elements for flexibility. So for example, making FP2 90 minutes instead of 60 minutes, that is an example of that. We saw in Qatar when we had the track issues with the curbs before the sprint shootout qualifying. I get so confused with all these formats. On the Saturday, they were able to do a 10-minute track familiarization session, which they never ever do in F1. So that shows there is that kind of flexibility. The issue here, though, was that we're dealing with probably the most famous patch of road in the world. Like, F1 has moved like heaven and earth to get these roads shut, to find the right times. That's why we started the race at 10. That's why we did qualifying at midnight, because they needed to find a time that they could probably shut the roads. So that was the extra difficulty here. Like, I do agree that would have been a cleaner solution. Say, look, let's call off today. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll find a way to make up the time. And I think if we were at any other race circuit, we probably could have done that. But because we're dealing with like so many authorities, we're dealing with like police, fire department, we're dealing with Clark County Commission and everyone like that. That made things like infinitely more complicated. So I think that's something else to consider in all of this as well, is that F1 had to really scramble to try and make sure that it could work things out. In the end, we finished FP2 at 4
a.m.
and that was when the roads were meant to already be fully reopened. So that would have caused some disruption anyway. So it was tricky. I agree that would have been a much better way to do it, because ultimately this was a race that was already being criticized for not being very fan friendly due to the viewing options, due to the price of the tickets and hotels and things like that. And then to literally say to fans after 8 minutes, you got to go, guys. Like, you're out of here. Not a good look.
I'm happy to be in charge of race organization. I've got this all figured out.
I'd back that. Yeah, I want to see that.
So then it gets a lot worse, because it was like, I think a lot of fans now, especially the American fans who may not be as familiar with F1 and don't know, for instance, like the Spa debacle of a couple years ago, when those poor fans sat through all that rain and they saw 3 laps that were never even under green, just behind the safety car or something. And then they called the race and they never got refunds for that. So to think that F1 was going to say, we'll give you refunds for all this after they'd spent, $500 million on the race or whatever. I don't think they were in a giving mood. So of course the fans wanted that, but first they came out with this statement and it felt very condescending. Like, for those who are new to motorsports, it's important. You understand? And then there was a line of like, well, it was essentially concerts and things get canceled all the time. And this is just another one of those things. But the difference is if you would go to a concert and it's rained out or the artist doesn't perform, at a normal concert, you get a refund for that.
Yeah.
So
I had a concert in September I was really excited for. It got called off. I got my money back and I'm like, okay, well, I've not lost anything here.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. Like, okay, they gave out this merchandise voucher for $200 to the fans who were affected, which I don't know how much a one-day ticket would have cost for Thursday, but I'm going to guess it was a fair bit more than $200. But the people who had a 3-day ticket, you've lost a third of your on-track action and a third of the stuff you bought your ticket for. I know it's only practice, but I'd be pretty annoyed. Like, that's ridiculous that you've not got anything back for that, even though you're out of pocket. So, yeah, I fully agree. Like, that was a big difference. And the other bit that really grated me in the whole statement was it happens. Like, it's kind of like, it happens. Like, these things happen. Like, you get the wrong coffee order, it happens. Your practice session you spent $100 wanting to attend, it happens.
And they essentially said too, and that basically the show must go on.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That, which is terribly insulting.
Yeah.
And again, I understand why you can't apologize. Like you got to kind of toe the line, but there is a way to express remorse and sorrow, and try to go above and beyond to show that, and none of that was done.
No.
And like in the Chicago street race incident, you can ultimately it stunk, but you can understand. Okay, it's weather. It was
it was out of their control.
It was out of their control. This was their fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
this was their fault, and then just to say it happens. And just the statements as well. Until a few hours before the race yesterday actually took place, I was over the whole weekend after that. I was done because I was like, this is ridiculous. I've never seen an organization, really any company that I can think of, say, hey, to our customers, you know what? We're actually not sorry about that, and I know you're mad, but too bad.
Are you familiar with Formula One?
No, but this
isn't new.
This wasn't even to pretend. This wasn't even to try to pretend like, hey, we do care about the fans or something like that. Like, this was like, F you, and if you don't like our explanation, then F you again. And
this is Formula One.
I guess I didn't realize it was brazen. Is that fair, Luke, what he's saying?
I think
they have a history of being pretty.
They do, but the other things are like coming back to Spa, for example. The thing there was that ultimately it was because there was technically a race, or however you want to classify it, with 2 laps behind the safety car. That meant they didn't have to give full refund tickets and things like that. And ultimately that impacts the promoter. Like, it's the promoter who the model works that a promoter will pay a fee to Formula One to host a Grand Prix, and then they will get all of the revenue from ticket sales and stuff like that. So basically, especially Spa, which is a promoter that's not as wealthy as maybe some of the others, it was like, if you have a race where you basically have to give back all of your ticket sales, then that's going to really hurt you financially. The difference with this race is the promoter of the Las Vegas Grand Prix is Liberty Media. So it's like, it's F1's own patch. It's
all in one thing.
Exactly, yeah. Liberty, which is worth shop. How many billions of dollars, I do not know. I don't understand why they kind of said, let's get some good PR here. Let's say this bad thing's happened on our great big weekend. Let's recognize that, hold our hands up to the fans and say, here's your money back.
And that's the thing. We're talking about $500 million, right? So what would they have had to reimburse in tickets? Whatever that number is. I don't even know. Like, let's just say it's 100,000, and maybe it's low, maybe it's high.
Well, there'd be a few million at least, because think about the Paddock Club alone, right? They were selling $15,000 tickets for a 5-day pass.
Okay,
which I don't
so
even know it was 5 day,
up.
But part of that included the 30-minute opening ceremony. That was
okay, but divide that up. Like, you can parse it out. Like, divide it up. So whatever that number is, let's raise it. Let's say it's 300,000. Whatever that number. At the end of the day, it's almost like a drop in the bucket. Like,
even millions though is dropped in the bucket.
Even if it's a million, it's a drop in the bucket. It's the cost of doing business, and it sucks. It's going to cut in our butt. We're going to be out $1 million, but you know what? We're going to be okay.
Exactly.
And it's really easy to spend on people's money, and I say that all the time. But in this case, the hit you're going to take is worth it. But what's frustrating about this is I don't think anything's going to change, because, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, they won. In the end of the day, they're going to come out of here with a smashing success that people are going to be talking about. Oh my goodness, that race was great.
Yep.
It was so exciting. That is a mere footnote. And and I think people are going to forget about it.
Yeah,
and they don't. And it's, again, like Spa, like it's just going to be like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
This is how we do it, and we're not going to change.
To the point that on Saturday, ahead of the race, Las Vegas put out a statement and announcement going, hey, if you want your tickets for 2024, put down a deposit now. It's like, timing of it was just incredible.
I think what really struck me is that, like in NASCAR, right? NASCAR might want to say the same things, you know, or anybody might want to say, like, you know what, we're not going to apologize for this, but they always go, you know what, we're worried about the fans. We're trying to make this right. Mm-hmm. We at least craft our PR statements and our actions to try to be like, we're listening, we care. There was just no ounce of like, we feel for you.
There was no personal touch.
There was no compassion. There was no remorse. No. And there was no like sort of like, we understand that a lot of people, we made this race really expensive. And then our cheapest possible option was to come Thursday only, like for those people. And so not the people that can't afford the Paddock Club, the people that can't afford the Saturday ticket, that are true F1 fans that wanted to give it a try, that said, wow, like if I work a retail job and or in a restaurant and I've saved up my money to spend a few $100s for this Thursday ticket, and so I can see this. This is the only chance I have to see this. And then they lose out on that. You know, I talked to those fans. I talked to them for a story they did on The Athletic, and it's heartbreaking because they're like, they can't come back. No. They can't, and there's no refund for them. And it's just like, now they feel stupid and they feel, you know, taken advantage of. They feel like fools. And again, from F1's perspective, it's just like, well, I almost feel like F1's saying, yeah, but it's not really for you guys. We're doing this for the elite, the wealthy. If you guys want to try to come, that's fine. You're allowed to come. We're not going to keep you out, but we're certainly not going to cater our experience to you. It's not about you. It's about the really, really wealthy people. And that to me is just like, oof, what a terrible, maybe look, again, like you said, right now, it's not hurting them. Someday down the road,
I agree.
They're going to need those people. I would think.
I wrote about this, and I didn't say this because I didn't want to make it a NASCAR thing. But there are a lot of how Formula One has kind of blossomed and grown over the last handful of years. There are a lot of parallels to NASCAR and its growth in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, and how NASCAR really turned its back on its core fan. And they made a lot of decisions that basically said, we're going to give you the middle finger. We don't care about you. We're going to chase new money. And it worked for a while. But eventually that balloon pops. And when that balloon popped, they were like, what do we do? And then they had to go back and try to win that core fan back. And at some point, this Formula One thing it's not in the United States. It's probably not going to continue to rise. It feels like it's going to go the other direction. And then what do you do? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they don't care because this isn't. You go back like 2000. It was 2000 at what was it? The Brickyard at Indianapolis. Yeah, 2005. Yeah. The tire debacle. They've had issues there. Like this isn't. They've had these moments where they just kind of stick it to the fans.
But what do you think, Luke? Like, I mean, do they care?
I think, yeah. I think we've seen such an explosion of the fan base because of Drive to Survive and everything in recent years that we went through that patch in back end of 2021 when we had that amazing title fight between Max and Lewis, and through 2022 when every race would be like, it's a new record in terms of how many fans have come to this circuit, and TV figures are up, and everything was going up, everything was green, and that was amazing to see. And obviously the US fan interest has been incredible. That's why we cover it on The Athletic, because it is catering to these fans who have shown such passion. And I think this year I think, Jordan, to your point, I think we are seeing the start of that plateau of this rise in American interest. It's going to start sort of evening out the slope, and I think we are already at that point. Vegas, the F1 movie, that's all going to help, and we're definitely not going back to the bad old days. Like, I think F1 is here to stay in America, but ultimately it's got to remember that it's the fans who made it happen. Like, it is down to them, it's down to their passion, it's down to the people who braved the rain at COTA all those years ago, it's down to the people who came back when COVID had cancelled the race for a couple of years. Like, that, you can't forget those guys. And I know Vegas as a race is like, maybe it is a bit more of a B2B and a marketing and a sort of like, it is for that higher spender, and it is maybe more about the show and the spectacle, and to say, look, F1 races in Las Vegas. But there are still fans who come, and I found it interesting in like all the interviews and stuff leading up to the race. the word customer was used so much, and it really rankled me. Like, I understood, like, okay, you think about these people as customers and you want to give them a good experience, and I heard like the term, we want to give them value. So like, if they're going to spend a lot of money, you want to make sure they get their money's worth, so include stuff like soft drinks and all your food and your ticket price and whatever. But I think ultimately, and maybe that ties into their response, that they are just a customer. And well, if you look at the T's and C's on your ticket, we did our bit. It's not our fault. So sorry, guys. And that, it doesn't feel very good. And I think that ultimately the fact this race was so good in the end, as you say, it's probably going to be like, F1 was a success in Vegas. But I don't think people are going to forget what happened on Thursday very, very quickly, especially the fans that you spoke to, Jeff, who were so badly out of pocket.
But do they care, though? And if they don't care, it doesn't matter.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done this before. And it's just like
Yeah.
they just keep marching forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. So long as the arrows keep going the right way, and as long as the tickets keep being sold, and they can keep saying, we've sold out, then, they're going to say, well, why do we need to go on a big fan-pleasing drive? But I think there's only so much that you can do until they say, no, we're done.
The balloon eventually pops.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the race. So, FP2, as late as it was, ends up getting in smoothly with no incidents. The track doesn't break further. It all holds up. The next day, they do another practice. They do qualifying. Very fun. Charles Leclerc wins the pole. And it seems like, the vibes are getting better. It felt like, I don't know about you guys, but when I woke up Saturday and started walking around a bit, you could really start to feel like the big atmosphere starting to build slowly. And then when it got closer, just walking around the strip and seeing people starting to pour out of the casinos toward the track, toward the various grandstand areas, it was like, this is a big deal. This is really fun. People are really in a good mood. They are really excited about this to see what happens. Luke, you have been to every single F1 race this year except Brazil, so you go all around the world. I don't know what the fan reaction and the noise was like at this one compared to some of those other ones that are really, really frenzied and like Japan, those fans seem to be really loud.
Yeah.
I don't know what some of the loudest fans are, but what are some of the best atmospheres, you think?
Yeah, you look at Japan, definitely, like they're crazy. Like I walk into the fan area and there's fans wearing like full race suits, full helmets. They've got DRS wings on hats that are fully operational and everything, and it's incredible. And you go there. I remember, I went for my track run, and it was like completely dark, like 3 hours after qualifying and finished, and the grandstand is still full, and it's like they love it so much. Monza with the Tifosi, similar. Zandvoort as well is absolutely incredible with all the Max Verstappen fans. So I think they're probably the loudest ones, I would say, in terms of the fan base.
So this was a little bit different crowd because you had, obviously, like we talked about, you had some passionate fans who were able to get there, but a lot of people were there because it was Vegas. It was the spectacle. It was, I don't know what this is necessarily, but it's cool. I know all the celebrities, all my friends are going to be there.
Yeah.
All my Instagram influencer, whatever, and I got to be there too. There's that sense of FOMO. So I don't know that generates the same amount of noise and passion in some ways, but I still feel like they were pretty into it and pretty loud from what I could hear. It was a pretty good atmosphere, at least.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think that these street races always do have that slightly different edge. Like somewhere like Monaco, for example, it's Monaco, so it's always slightly set apart. But you think of Singapore, like this race reminded me a lot of Singapore, even in terms of the way the track looks and like the shots they use on the TV broadcast and seeing the fans where they were. It was like, yeah, I can see that similarity. So I would agree. I think that even hearing from like your sort of trackside observations, Jeff, like when you were saying that they were sort of booing at certain points or cheering these moments, like when Max got a penalty, you said that fans were cheering.
Yeah, they announced it over like because they're playing the track feed that had yesterday. It had like Bob Varsha and Connor Daly on there and stuff, not the F1 feed.
Yeah.
Over the loudspeakers anyway. And so when they said that Max had a 5-second penalty for running Charles off there to start the race, the whole grandstand just erupted.
Yeah. And it's
I was
that
like,
kind of reaction that ultimately, okay, I don't agree with that, but it's like, but it shows there's that passion and that interest. And I think a lot of people thought that people in Vegas aren't going to be that interested in the on-track action, but clearly they were.
Yeah. Isn't it great that Max, by the way, it's just like really healed it up this week? Like it feels like he's gone full villain. in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I mean, he was critical of the track, critical of the atmosphere. His driving on the track was very aggressive. His comment when he got informed of the penalty was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's good. Like, whether you like him or not, you need character. Sports is about good and bad.
Yeah.
It's about rooting for people or rooting against them. And when you look at this, and I keep going back to NASCAR, like there is a lack of villains in NASCAR, right? But right now, your best driver has got to say
I don't agree with that though.
I don't know, man. Like
he wasn't saying it to be a villain or stir people up. He's like just taking a dump on the race, basically. Like, this is stupid.
But he was. But that's
not like, oh, I'm going to hate this guy because of that. Because I think actually a lot of the European fans are like, he's right.
Sure. And he's playing to, and there's going to be people that like him, but there are a lot of people that don't, though. And
sure. Well, that's because he wins so much.
But it's that's part of it. But it's good, though, that he speaks out. Like, you've got that. And it's great that he's willing to embrace everything that comes with it. And it's good. You need that. You need that bad guy. And it doesn't seem like he's rattled or bothered. It almost kind of seems like he plays into it a little bit.
I think he just is what he is. Like, he's very happy to just speak his mind about matters. And I know for a fact that his comments about Vegas this weekend have not gone down well in a lot of quarters of the paddock, because a lot of effort has gone into this, and your world champion is being like, I don't want to be here. So that's not a good look at all. But Max he's never inauthentic. Like, he is always very much what you see is what you get, and that is in his driving style, that's in how he approaches things. And even with what we saw on track, like, he was very upset with the stewards over the radio, being like, send them my regards, and that's brilliant stats.
It's so good.
But then post-race, he was like, actually, it was really low grip, and I probably accept that was the right call that they gave me that penalty. So he has that, I guess, he has that reflective ability to say, like, I can take it out of the heat of the moment and see this thing. But in terms of the event itself, he was asked post-race, like, hey, like, you won the race, you were singing Viva Las Vegas after winning.
Are you on board now?
Yeah. Do you like this?
No.
And he's like, no, still don't. So it's incredible. But that is Max.
That.
Yeah, you do.
You need personalities. You need to drive that.
Completely.
And that's in sports in general.
Yeah.
But here, I think the thing about Max is that he's not the type of charismatic personality that you can get attached to. Like, he doesn't have that, like, he's dominating, but like when Tiger Woods was dominating, right, people were still want to see what he's going to do because it was just like compelling and magnetic. Max is just like, again, like, and that's, we talked about the plateauing of the American product. I think as much as anything, obviously it's Max winning, but if it was somebody, F1 always has dominant drivers, I don't know. And nobody's ever been this dominant to this degree. No. I mean, people say, well, Lewis and Schumacher and Vettel, but not like this.
No.
He's setting all sorts of records and just really taking a lot of the excitement out of it every week. But I do wonder if he was a little bit more personable or I don't know, likable or something, that maybe people would be drawn to it more, like to tune in and see how he's going to do. Instead, it's just like, But I would like to ask you, Luke, like, we have our perception of Max, right? Like just from TV and stuff. You don't have to go too far into it. I don't want you to get yourself in trouble. Like,
please, have a shot of champagne.
How is he? From a media standpoint, how do you find him to deal with? Like, is he cooperative? Is he surly, difficult? I mean, we all have, NASCAR drivers who are good and bad.
We do, yeah. I think he is cooperative, and I must say that I think full credit needs to go to him and to Red Bull for how they work with him. And what really stood out to me this year was Singapore. So that was the one race this year that Red Bull has not won. It's the only race in the last 17 races that Max Verstappen hasn't won. It's remarkable, the domination he's had. And that weekend he came into it and he was like, it might be a bit difficult. And we were like, we've heard this so many times. And then it genuinely was. He dropped out in Q2, had a nightmare weekend. And we basically, the way F1 works is that we have the media pen, which is for all of the drivers who didn't finish inside the top three after qualifying in the race. So basically we never talk to Max there because he is always in the top three. And all of a sudden he's down there. So I head on down and there's a group of us. And Max turns up and he's already changed and he's holding a can of Red Bull and he's watching the end of qualifying. He wants to see what goes on before talking to us. And then he comes over and he's so just like matter of fact about it, understanding about it. And I think he talked for a good 5 minutes or so. And we rarely get that length of time with any driver, regardless of the result. But especially when a driver's had a bad day, some PRs are so quick to say, okay, we're done. We're finished. It might be a minute and a half or something like that. And it's useless to us. And we're like, come on, you've got to own up to it. And I actually talked to Red Bull after that. I was like, you guys and Max deserve a lot of credit for, on a bad day, still saying we're available and we're happy to talk. And ultimately, because that is such a minor blip in what has been an incredible year, that maybe does make it a bit easier to deal with those kind of points. But I think we have seen Max as I first spoke to him when he was 16, 17 or something like that. And he's definitely, I think, matured as the years have gone by. And the big change that I've seen this year is that his dominance is such that I think he's not thinking, I need to win every race. I can't win the race at turn one, otherwise it's lost. Like, he's happy to take his time. He's become more patient. And I think even in just his media handling and stuff like that, like, he is happy to maybe go into a little bit more detail than before and always speak his mind, which I think he deserves credit for. Like, even on a day when he's maybe a little bit briefer than normal, there'll still be something in there, which is great. And I think that, yeah, Max, the perception of him from the outside is maybe, I think, unfair. Like, I do think he is ultimately, he's a good guy. He does have, I think, a real passion for racing, and ultimately all the stuff around it, he's not so fussed by. Like, what he wants to do is race and win. That's all he cares about. The guy goes home and he's doing his sim racing. Like, that's how dedicated he is to his craft. So I think it's, it's interesting. I think we've seen Max grow through this year, and even through all the dominance, he's still got that I think that openness and honesty, which, as Jordan says, like, you need that. You need people to tell it how it is and give their view. And Max is very happy to say, look, I don't care if you guys are angry with me. This is what I think, and I'm going to tell you that.
Yeah, a couple years ago, I was thinking that Max was sort of like a Chase Elliott, where he didn't really want to give you anything. He just kind of wanted to get through his obligations, leave, and just wanted to race without any fuss. And I do think he wants to race without any fuss, but I almost now think he's a lot more like a Kyle Larson, where Larson, the thing is, like, you're not going to get a lot out of him aside from racing, because that's all he cares about. Like, that's his life. That's his passion. He just wants to race. He wants to talk about racing. So to me, like, I have started to see a little more similarities there, where, like, it can be frustrating at times because you're not getting, everybody would love to have, like, the Daniel Ricciardo, or the Lewis Hamilton, personality and charisma that pops off the page, and they're so interesting and funny, and they say, all sorts of things. But when you have the guy, like, they're telling you who they are. Like, Max is saying, I just want to race. And when you're throwing things like Vegas at me, with all the fanfare and all that stuff, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
I just am here to compete and race. And anything that is beyond that, it's for somebody else. I don't want to walk a red carpet. I don't want to do that kind of stuff. So, I think that I think Larson will do, because he goes along a lot more with what NASCAR wants to do and stuff like that. But, like, there's elements of that where, like, if it was up to him, he would just race every day, and that's all there is. And if you try to make it any more than that, there's nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. And that opening ceremony that Max said he felt he looked like a clown.
Yeah.
And he came up through the box and everything. And there's memes going around of it, comparing it to Hunger Games when they're doing sort of their introductions and stuff. And it's very true. And, like, I heard about the briefing that took place before that opening ceremony. It was literally like 30 minutes before they were going out. And they had I don't know who it was, but they had a hype man talking to the drivers, and he was like, guys, you got to go out there. I apologize for the accent. You got to go out there. I want you to be rock stars. You got to be rock stars. You got to do the air guitar and stuff like that. And
this is good. That's good, like New York. That's like a New York accent.
You're like a tough guy. Can you do like a Chicago?
I
you got any other
that's like my one.
Any other impersonation?
I could throw y'all, but Madeline's taught me that, and that's about it. But yeah, I'll go as far as that. But that was the spirit. And apparently all of the drives were just like dead face. They were like, oh really? Yeah. What? Like, because they don't care. Like, ultimately, I think there's very few drivers on the grid who understand that they are more than just racing drivers and the celebrity appeal. And it is your Lewis Hamiltons and your Daniel Ricciardos. And, like, Lewis was very open, saying, like, hey, let's give Vegas a chance. And after the race, he said, well, I guess it proved people wrong.
Yeah, he was very adamant about that.
Yeah, and that's, again, you need that kind of opinion. But I think that Max is not alone in the way he feels. I think he was just the only one to really go as hard as he did about it all. And
it's great, though.
It is.
You need that. You don't want them to be disingenuous.
Completely.
And you don't want them to feel neutered.
Yeah.
And you want them to be yourselves.
Yeah.
And if that's who you are, then be it. Don't try to be something you're not. And
absolutely.
And the nice thing is you do have contrast, though. Yeah. You've got Max, but you also have Lewis, who's very also outspoken in his own way and opinionated, which is great. And it's a nice yin and yang. And it's, it's all of that. And Lewis's comments post-race, there was a lot of drive. I thought, I think Lance Stroll last night was pretty good about it. There's a couple other ones who are like, yeah, we get it. Yeah, it's a lot, but we, once or twice a year, we're okay with it. And they're doing it every week. That's a different conversation, and we'll see. But you have to understand, like, this is part of it. Mm-hmm. Like, this is when you compare this to other sports.
Yeah.
Like, if you Major League Baseball, you play 162 games.
Yeah.
Those 162 games, you're dealing with media obligations. You're traveling and all of this other stuff. That's part of it. Yeah. And it's not always fun. It's not always glamorous, but it is what it is.
And it's what pays the bills. Like, ultimately, that's how we get F1 on the map in Vegas. That's how we bring in the money.
That's why you're here in Vegas.
Exactly.
And if you don't want to do that's fine. Yeah. But you're not going to have races like Vegas. Exactly. You're not going to have the Miami Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And you're going to have other things else. You may not even have a race at Coda, and you may not be in this marketplace anymore.
Yeah, completely.
So the race itself.
Do you need a topper, by the way?
I'm good, thank you.
We're good, Jordan. We don't need refills on champagne.
Excuse me for being hospitable.
So the race itself, obviously expectations were, is it fair to say, extremely low or no expectations at all? People are just like, it's all about the spectacle, and it's not going to be, it's just a show, and they're going to do the race, and it's going to be it. So maybe that plays into how great everybody thought it was, but I actually think even if the expectations were high, it's still delivered. I mean, you had lead changes and close racing and daring moves, and it was not predictable until Max finally kind of got out front in the last 15 laps and pulled away enough. But even then, you had that great move by Leclerc on Checo at the end that made it exciting. So, Luke, why did this race work? What were the elements of this track that made this a good race?
I think the track layout itself, which was panned by a lot of people, and some of the drivers said they had very low expectations for the quality of racing, because it's not the kind of intricate, complex, even for a street circuit layout that we sometimes see, like a Baku, for example. That has so many different elements, and it is really, really exciting. This was far more simplistic, and like I played it on the video games to get an idea of how it is, and I thought, let's see what kind of racing this offers. But it turned out to actually be a pretty perfect layout. Like, the DRS zones were in exactly the right place. There was exactly the right length and everything as well. And it meant that we could have those lunges at the end of the strip that Leclerc did on Perez in the last lap. We had 3 changes for the lead within 5 laps, which I think that's probably the most we've had in F1 in that shorter space of time this season. I know by NASCAR standards, you guys are thinking, oh, come on. But that's... you
haven't seen the race in Martinsville.
Yeah. And that's a good sign. Like, that shows the track layout really, really works. And I think all of the drivers really, really enjoyed it. And it does show that sometimes a very simple layout can be beneficial. So I think that contributed. I think that the fact Red Bull aren't as dominant on street tracks, I think that also played into it. I think that gave Leclerc and Ferrari a better chance. I think that Leclerc, at one point, I thought he had it. I genuinely thought that when Max was stuck behind Russell and Leclerc had gone out in front, he got that little bit of a tyre delta. I thought, yeah, this is Charles' race to lose. And ultimately, the safety car worked against him, and not coming into the pits, that didn't work out either. So I think that kind of bunched it together. The safety cars obviously helped as well, bring the field in. So I think it was those factors, but I think the track layout, that's what really made this work. And it was very low grip, and that's something that the drivers want addressed for next year. The cold temperatures didn't help that, but it made for some really exciting racing right the way through the field. And I think that, I probably would say Singapore is the best race of the season still, just because you had that final lap, 4 drivers could still win it. But this is up there, like, absolutely. And it does show that for all of the buzz around the spectacle in Vegas, for all of the idea that it's 99% spectacle and 1% sporting event, that 1%, that is going to be the lasting memory of this weekend for everyone.
And at the end of the day, sports is about entertainment and promotion and all of that stuff. But you still, at the end of the day, what happens on the field, what happens on the racetrack, what happens on the course, you need compelling action. Yeah. And that's the thing. You can have all of the other great stuff off of it, but unless you have a good core product on the racetrack or the field or wherever, you're not going to be able to sell that. And I think now that you did that, that's the thing. Is like, you combined all of this cool extracurricular stuff, and then you delivered a great race. It's like, boom, that's the perfect recipe. Here's the pie.
Completely, yeah.
Let me throw something at you here, because you wrote the driver reaction about how they want, there needs to be some changes for next year related to the grip. Obviously, the temperatures were cold. Now I will say they got lucky because this time of year here, it could have been easily 10 degrees Fahrenheit colder.
Wow.
I think this was about as warm as you're ever going to get at this time of year here.
I've been here at this time of the year when it's usually about normal.
Well, that's okay. Fine. Anyway,
he's so angry at me.
I think that it could have been a lot colder and it could have been even a bigger story, right?
Yeah.
So, but as we see with NASCAR and like the intermediate track package, right? Sometimes when it's a really hot, greasy track, it's a completely different race than when it's cooler and they can, they're packed up more.
Jordan's
spilling champagne on my podcast.
There's literally not a drop of liquid on your thing.
Okay, can we just get through this without topping off in champagne 3 times? I mean, good Lord. Do you need a napkin?
No, it's
fine.
Napkin?
Here,
it's good.
You know what?
Jordan, you were talking about how clean you are.
Yeah.
I am a clean freak.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you just spilled champagne. Jordan just spilled champagne.
I poured champagne and it overflowed.
It's probably because you've had 2 glasses. It's like, nurse it, man.
3.
We're just trying to make it through a podcast. All right.
Anyway, it's cold here. That's what he's saying.
It is cold.
Isn't it a positive in some ways that there was such low grip and the tires were not wearing that well? Because that is what made it a different... Isn't that part of what made it a different kind of race? Like, because in the normal race, the Ferrari tires drop off more than they would yesterday. Like, look, and Max would have pulled away way sooner and been farther out. It sort of negated their advantage a little bit to the tires weren't wearing out as much. Now, some people had wear problems, but like other people hit it perfectly. Like Esty Bestie, he managed his tires perfectly.
Yeah.
I don't know why Gasly didn't. Gasly had like the opposite problem of he did, and he said his tires were wearing out. But like Esteban went from 16th to 4th, like, and that was he was saying that it was a lot of because the tires he managed his tires correctly. So
Stroll went from back to finish 5th.
Yeah.
19th he started.
Yeah, 19th.
So like, is it really that bad that it's low grip and it could cause mistakes? And because we didn't see any huge shunts. I mean, Lando obviously went in early and had to go to the hospital and he was okay, but it wasn't like horrible type thing.
Yeah.
Like, am I totally off base here and thinking like, no, I don't know, let's maybe not change anything?
No, I think there's an element to that. And I think of the race we did in Turkey a couple of years ago. And like that track is incredible. It's a travesty. It's not on the F1 calendar because it's one of the best that's ever been built. But it was, they'd water blasted the circuit, I think. And it was so cold at that time of year that there was like no grip for the drivers. And I remember watching it and being like, this is terrible. Like, I want to see the drivers going through turn 8, that classic corner, flat out, really challenging, really pushing. But they were all kind of managing the low grip, and it ended up in a really weird race. And then afterwards, I came away and I was like, actually, that was actually quite a good event because of the low grip. And I think there is definitely credence to that point. I think that it does make it a bit more challenging for the drivers. It does contribute to mistakes. I mean, what you saw at turn 1 at the start, for example, that was because it was such low grip. Like, the tires were really, really cold. The restarts, a lot of the drivers said it was like driving on ice when they came away because the safety car slowed things down so much. So I think that, yes, that does help, but also I think there is a middle ground to be met. And I think that if it were, like Daniel Ricciardo spoke and he said that on the outside of turn 3, he said that was, you could take that flat out if the grip was there, but it was just never there at all this weekend. So I think if it was a little bit warmer and the tyres are working that little bit better, it might be an even more thrilling race and more exciting. But no, this does contribute to mistakes being made.
And the other thing, I asked drivers too, like if you anything about this track that you maybe would like to tweak, and a couple of them had said maybe in some of the corners, I think is it 14, the one where they a lot of them kind of went off there. They're like, hey, we can maybe move that curbing in a little bit on the inside or get rid of it at all, and that way it gives us more room and more options there. Beyond just limiting the curbing, like there really was no criticisms of the track. Like they were very, from people I talked to, they were very supportive and really praised how the racing unfolded. The only thing they'd like to see different when I asked the question was like, can we just move the start time? Like, can we just like maybe a couple hours, please? Like that was the only, I don't even say it's a criticism because it wasn't like over the top. It was just if there's anything we could point to, like we'd like different, it's just 10 p.m. local time is a little rough. And then also I think You could maybe get away with the 10 p.m. start time, by the way, if you don't have all of your practice and qualifyings the way they did. Because that was the other thing, too. And I think, when you have a practice session start at 3 a.m. And you have qualifying at, midnight?
Yeah.
I think if you can change those and you can still you could maybe get away with having the race when you do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's something that F1 I think does need to look at for next year, because the schedule has been, as we talked about at the top of the show and as all three of us have experienced this weekend, has been brutal on our bodies, and we're not going to every single race working on these cars and patching up repairs after water valve covers come up and things like that. So it has taken a big toll on all of the teams, definitely, and everyone's like, we've now got to go to Abu Dhabi. Like, I'm on a plane to London in 5 and a bit hours time, and like then I go home for 34 hours and then I'm off to Abu Dhabi, and like everyone in the F1 paddock is doing that, and it's a lot. And next year it starts a triple header where it's Las Vegas, then Qatar, then Abu Dhabi to end the year, and the week before Vegas is a bye week, but then there's a triple header before that as well. So it's 6 races in 7 weeks. If we do not change the Vegas schedule next year, we're going to get to Qatar and be broken as a paddock. Like, they really need to think about that. I think we're okay dealing with an 8 o'clock start or something like that. That would be perfect. And I think they maybe do need to talk with again, it comes down to the road closures and things like that, and say, look, the priority is the well-being of the paddock, not, how do we find a time that works best for the viewers in Europe or whatever so they can wake up and watch the race. Like, forget that. Think about the people here. I know we got to think about the fans, but ultimately the well-being of everyone in the paddock is so important.
But the unfortunate thing, and we talk about this all the time in NASCAR, what is the biggest thing? It's TV ratings. It's TV contracts. It's making sure your TV partners have that optimal time to maximum, right or wrong or different. That's what it's about. And the unfortunate reality is the people who are dealing with this on a daily basis, who are on the grind, whether it's fans or people working in the industry, they just have to suck up and deal with it. And it sucks, but it comes down to TV. And I don't know how you do this as a schedule. Like, one of the drivers mentioned last night, like, why can't we just have all 3 races, U.S. races in a row? It's like, that doesn't work because you can't have Miami in the fall because they play in the Dolphins parking lot, or they have the race in the Dolphins parking lot and the Dolphins are playing games. And you can't have Vegas off of this time of the year because of logistics and timing and everything else. And so, like, there is no way to really feasibly make this work. So you probably got to bite the bullet on the TV side a little bit and go to your TV partner and say, listen, we're going to have to concede the front part of this by an hour or so, just because we need to figure it out. But you do reach a breaking point, whether it's fans, whether it's people in the industry, where you just push them too hard and they can't do it.
Completely. And we're at that point already with next year 24 races. That's a huge amount of travel for everyone, and it's a lot that it's going to put on the whole paddock. So there isn't really nothing's being taken away at the moment. It's just like being added. And next year we've got a month-long gap in October, for example, which has kind of been suggested that's in there for well-being reasons, but the cynic in me thinks that they might, the following year in 2025, go, we've got this nice big gap in October, let's put another race in there and get something else on the calendar. I will be intrigued to see what the TV ratings are for the Las Vegas race, like both in the US and like back in the UK for me and in Europe, because the start time, it apparently works for people in Las Vegas, like 10 p.m. prime time, whatever, but people on the East Coast, where half of the population of the United States are, 1 a.m. I don't know if that works quite so well. And in Europe, a 6 a.m. lights out in the UK. If you move that to 4 a.m., I think, to be honest, like, if you're going to wake up at 6 a.m., you're probably that dedicated, you'll be happy to give up another couple of hours.
Here's the question, and this is just me spitballing here. Like, you've done the night thing now in Vegas. Yeah. You're gonna do the night thing again next year. So I'm just saying, like, year 3. Do you just say, listen, we did it at night, you got the visuals, you know what it's gonna be like, we're gonna move it now to the day? I mean, does it get to a point where the novelty of running it at night kind of wears off? Or do you always gonna be part of the allure, and you can't go like Singapore, like sorry, that's just how it is. We're gonna just have to figure it out.
Yeah, I think Singapore's a perfect example. Like, they always run FP1 during the day. It looks terrible. Like, it looks so bad. And I think that for a race like Vegas, especially, that is all about the visuals and it is about these emotional, evocative sporting images, it's got to be a night race. Like, I don't think having this on the strip during the day will be anywhere near as spectacular. So I think we're always in that bind. But, like, when did it get dark here? Like 5 o'clock last night? Like, this time of year?
Listen, you could do the race at 7. I mean, like, you could you could do it here theoretically at 7 o'clock. No problem. Yeah. And you could have the race. But the problem, again, you're sticking it to your European audience and your Asian audience. And I don't know if you can go to that degree though,
Yeah.
because that's a really hard ask for your TV partner, but
who are paying
a lot of money. Again,
yeah,
and that's what is funding all of this. That is what. But again, you've got to figure out a way, and there is a breaking point of how we need to do this, and there needs to be a little bit of balance. And conversely, American race fans know this very, very well. We have to get up very early, 8 o'clock on 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning to watch Formula 1. Sometimes even earlier. Like sometimes you just got to be a fan of the sport, like European soccer or anything else. You got to bite the bullet and get up early. And so maybe, I don't mean to be crass, but like if you're a European fan or an Asian fan, like sorry, like you're just gonna have to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd like to get out of here by asking Luke 3 brief questions, if that's all right.
I'll just stop talking.
No. I just have 3 questions for him. I want to shift
Sip my
it
champagne.
to him a little bit because we're first of all, we're so honored to have you on the podcast. Jordan and I are huge fans of yours. We're really happy that we're teammates now. We're looking forward to being teammates with you. We're hoping that would be the case someday, even before that.
But we advocated for you. I'm not saying we got you the job with the company, but like
you got us the job with the company.
Listen, I mean, you owe me a bottle of champagne.
You're gonna spill
it's
it
right there. Yeah, it's
you know what? Just ask your questions.
Anyway, so and you and Madeline have done a phenomenal job this year. I hope everybody's paid attention to the F1 coverage. It is best in class. I can't imagine anybody's doing it any better in the entire world. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
And what's amazing about you is we were with you on your birthday in Miami this year. You turned 28?
Correct.
You're 28
we weren't in
years
Miami.
old.
It was last year.
What?
It was last year. We weren't in Miami this year.
Yes, we were. We had our summit with
we
him.
went for dinner,
Oh,
Jordan.
the summit. Yeah, that's right. I'm thinking of the race. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you bought him green tea.
Yeah.
Green tea
Good
shots.
drinks.
Yeah, that was a good shot.
That's a good shot. Those become my go-to, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you are 28 years old, and you are one of the most accomplished motorsport drivers in the entire world. Can you tell us, how did this happen for you? How did you get here?
Oh yeah, quite a story. But yeah, firstly, thank you guys. That's incredibly kind of you both, and I just know it is fully reciprocated. Like, I adore working with you both. I loved both of your work before coming here, and to get to know you guys better and to be doing this podcast with mimosas, like that's really cool. If you'd have
You're
told
welcome.
me,
Thank you. My idea, Jeff.
if you'd have told me a year ago I'd be doing this, like I'd have wondered what on earth had happened. But I'm incredibly glad it has happened. I guess for me, my story is like I started out young, and I think from the age of like 13, 14, I knew I wanted to be a journalist doing something. And then I was a fan of F1, so it kind of just got smushed together basically. And I just started writing and got picked up by various outlets as the years went on, and kind of just learned through making my mistakes basically. Like I learned through getting things wrong. I learned through having angry PRs or drivers onto you and things like that. And then you sort of find your feet a little bit, and you also just with age get more mature. And I know, again, I'm only 28, but I think that 10 years in the industry now has kind of taught me an enormous amount. And F1 is it's its own beast. And like we had Tashawn Reed, our Las Vegas reporter, here this weekend, and he said like it's impressive how you guys get stuff done because it is such a closed off world at times. And I think it took someone else from the outside to kind of say that and realize that really sunk that in. So I mean, before coming here, I spent 3 wonderful years with Autosport, and I adored working there. But The Athletic had always been a website I loved reading, and I always wanted to be able to write in that kind of style. So to have been able to join as part of the F1 coverage launch has been an incredible honor. And I think that this Las Vegas weekend has just been wonderful. Like we were told at the start of the year, Vegas is going to be huge for us. Like everything is gearing towards the Las Vegas Grand Prix for Formula One in the United States. And the way we've covered it and carried it all out, I'm just so blown away by. And it's, I think I said to you guys, like, I've not had this kind of feeling in my professional career in 10 years in terms of the quality and teamwork we've had in a single weekend. So that's kind of maybe a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's kind of how I got here, to be sat in a room with you guys drinking mimosas.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jordan. I can't even say it without choking on my words. All right. So I want to know, because I always wonder, and I don't know if you can put it into words, but look, we travel the NASCAR circuit, right? And it's like, I live in Denver, so most flights, even Charlotte for me, is like 2.5 hours. The West Coast flights are an hour and a half. You are flying all over the planet, like literally all over the planet. You're doing 22 races this year.
I traveled to Imola. I did go to Imola and flew home the same day. So I've traveled to 22. I've done 22 trips. Let's say
5 continents.
Okay.
5 continents. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 5 continents.
Africa and Antarctica.
You are going everywhere. What is it like to travel the world following this crazy circus? Can you, for the other people that are just at home and see this on TV, can you put it into words or describe what that's like at all?
It's incredible, and it is a big part of the pull for this job for me. Like, I grew up watching these races in Japan or Singapore or Monaco, and I thought it'd be so cool to be there one day. And a lot of the passion for F1 came from my mum, and we shared that from when I was a kid watching these races. And we'd always watch Monaco, and she'd always look at the Grand Hotel hairpin, and there's this hotel that looks over it, and basically it's like you're looking at literally down onto the cars. And she always said, I want to be there one day, I want to be there one day. And sadly she passed away a couple of years ago, so that's kind of sad that's never going to be a dream or possibility. But it's that kind of thing that made me think, like, I want to be able to travel the world and see the world. And I didn't travel a lot as a kid. Like, the third flight I ever took was going to Singapore to cover that race for the first time. Like, it is crazy. And now it's like, I keep track. I think I've done like 42, 43 flights this year. At the end of the year, I'll see how many weeks I've spent on airplanes, how much CO2 damage I've done to the environment as well. I'm very sorry, world. But it is incredible. Don't get me wrong. Like, it is amazing to see how much different cultures embrace F1, definitely, and to go to these wonderful cities, and just to, I think travel really does broaden the mind, and I feel very privileged I've been able to do that. Like, going to Japan, for example, I've been to Argentina for Formula E, I've been to Australia, I've been to New Zealand. Like, these aren't places that normal people go. And I think as an F1 community, we do kind of live in a bit of a bubble at times. Like, we'll be sitting in an airport gate being like, oh, when do you fly to Singapore? Oh, I'm going on this day, doing this route. And I think that the other people around us who might have taken that only one flight that year for their holiday must be thinking, who are these guys? Like, why are they moaning about, oh, they've got to go to Singapore? And I get that. And it's, again, it's not without its drawbacks. Like, it's a lot of sacrifice and time away from home and things like that. But there is a real community spirit in Formula One, and I think, like, particularly with like the group of friends I've got in the press room and with friends in teams and things like that, everyone has each other's back, and I think there is an understanding of we're all doing something very unique and very, I think, crazy, and one day we'll kind of look back and go, "Whoa, we did that." And I don't think I'm going to be doing this forever. Like, I think I'll get to a point where I say, hey, I don't want to travel so much, as a lot of people do in the sport. But yeah, it is a real honor to be doing it, and just, it's been the most remarkable way to see the world. And I don't think I'll ever tire of going to like Melbourne or to Tokyo and places like that. So I feel very, very fortunate.
You're the best at what you do, by the way. I mean, I tell you this all the time, but you are like,
okay.
there is no better person on the F1 beat than you. Like, you are the premier. You are the Bob Pockers.
All right, he gets it. You're gassing him up.
I'm sorry for being complimentary of my teammates. I build people up, Jeff. I don't knock them down. Well, okay,
that's very nice.
I'm never going to believe it as well either.
No, but it is true. It is absolutely true. Like, I sing your praises every right. I mean, and to work alongside you this weekend was remarkable.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you your favorite destination that F1 goes to, that you personally like to go to, and if there's a fan out there listening who's like, oh, I would like to, I'm thinking about going to an F1 race somewhere, what race should they go to?
I think my favorite destination would be Melbourne in Australia. I adore that city to pieces. If you told me you've got to pack your bags and move somewhere in the world tomorrow, I would go to Melbourne in a heartbeat. I love it there. It's just such a cool vibe. It's a really embracing and loving and warm city. So Melbourne that's probably my favorite race to go to. And if you're a fan, I would say if you can get to Melbourne, amazing. Like, it's a wonderful race. But I appreciate Australia is a long way away from everywhere. Oh. So honestly, Austin, get to Austin. Like, the United States Grand Prix is just a phenomenal fan event. Austin as a city is amazing. Like, I love going there. It's affordable. It's so fan focused, and I think it really ticks all of the boxes for what a lot of the listeners on this show will be looking for. Like, if you've not been to a Formula One race before, get along to Austin. Like, I think ticket prices have dropped for next year from where they were this year.
Did you get a free voucher though? That's the question.
$200 worth of merch. Yeah, you get some nice little t-shirts.
Do they apologize to you if they mess up? That's my question.
There might be a bit of a sorry or regret in there.
Bobby does a good job down there.
Yeah, he does. He really, really does. So I'd say I'd say Austin. Like, if you want to go somewhere, get along to Austin.
Well, Luke, thank you so much for taking the time to do this on 1 hour sleep. Jordan, thanks for the hotel room and the mimosas. And for everybody else listening, assuming you survive, Jordan's staying for 6 more days here in Vegas.
Yeah.
So assuming Jordan survives another week in Vegas, we may have another episode of the Teardown.
That would be fun.
Next week.
This is my first trip into Vegas where I've been here a week.
I'm sure.
What have you got planned for your week in Vegas, Jordan?
I got a Hoover Dam excursion tomorrow, a bunch of dinners, some shows. Parents are coming to town, got friends.
All right. Well, thanks for the invite.
You got kids.
Okay.
You can't bring your kids to Vegas.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, we may be back with you next week on the Teardown, but in the meantime, thanks everybody so much for listening. Thanks, Luke, and we will talk to you next time on the Teardown.